and welcome to another episode of The Clearview. My name's Jason. I'm joined by Mike Linderman, a near 30-year veteran of helping kids and families in crisis. Mike, welcome to The Clearview.
Well, thank you very much. And I just want to welcome everybody to our Space for Grace.
Space for Grace. That's so appropriate. It makes me think about the absolute goodness of God and how we need to remind ourselves, take a pause, remind ourselves, He's in our life. And He's for us, not against us.
He's in our everything. I mean, from the time we wake up, the time we go to bed, and He watches over us as we sleep, right?
Yeah, for sure. You know, our work is cut out for us, Mike. And
it's not getting easier.
No, and being a parent. When I think about our work being cut out for us, I think about all the pressures I had as a kid, and my kids, 17 and 19-year-old have. And I think about how those behaviors manifest, like whether it's escapism into social media and the cell phone, whether it's self-harm, whether it's sexual confusion, whether it's gender confusion. All of that stems from the situation that we're in today and what we're addressing on The Clearview.
I want you to think about it too. So we work with young kids, with these young teens and their families. And as we're working with these young teens and their families, we're working with future mothers. And so we need to do everything we can to help create these really powerful, confident young women who are going to raise these great future kiddos.
Yeah. When you say Space for Grace, the other thing I think about is, so many of our viewers are at the end of their rope. They don't know what to do. They're at the end of their hope. And this is a place they can turn to get the help they need. Some perspectives.
I mean, they're in a time of crisis.
Right.
And crisis looks different for every family, right? And we are seeing, we see themes. We're seeing transitions. We're seeing things are, it's getting more and more problematic. The symptoms that we're seeing from kids is getting more
severe.
Yeah, it's severe. It's frightening. It's scary. But when families are looking at themselves and and they feel like they're in crisis, they're not sleeping. They put padlocks on the outside of their bedroom door when they go to work. They lock their doors when they go to sleep at night. They have alarm systems and cameras. They don't know where their child is. Their child's self-harming and using substances and vaping and running with crowds of unhealthy. That might be their crisis.
Right.
Or they've got a kiddo that just never gets out of bed.
That's a crisis.
That's a crisis.
Right. When you have a crisis, that's a problem. And you really only have two choices. You either get into that problem or you get out of it. Mm-hmm. And there's just no way you can get out of it when it's your family. You are the parent. You are the guardian. That is your job.
And what's our number one job as a parent?
Keep them safe.
Keep our kids safe. That's our number one job. And so, like you said, you got to jump into this problem.
Yeah.
And here's part of the problem. You might be part of the problem.
Right.
Right?
Right.
We won't know that until we create some safety, and sometimes that safety ends up being residential care.
So talk a little bit about crisis in the family, Mike. Talk about, in your 30 some odd years of experience, what have you seen? What are the different forms? What are the different perspectives that parents have to understand when they have crisis? Maybe they don't know it.
I think a lot of times you're right. They don't really truly know it. Here's the thing I can tell you. When you are in a situation of crisis, you're constantly exhausted because you never get respite. And when you're in a situation of crisis, you're walking on eggshells. You're worried about the next conversation. You're worried about that next phone call. Is it the police? Is it the morgue?
Yeah.
Is it, I'm not even going to get a phone call because somebody grabbed my child and now I don't even know what country they're in. These are real life crises that we face. These are things that we hear. I have a family that was in crisis 12 years ago. They were coming across the border. Their 4-year-old was kidnapped and was gone for days. Border Patrol and law enforcement found this kiddo. Family's so grateful to the Border Patrol and our heroes in law enforcement. Yet 12 years later, it manifests into some horrific behaviors. This kiddo's got trauma, and she's never worked through it. So we have to do that work.
So there are viewers listening right now that already concluded, I have no crisis in my family, this is not for me, they're wrong, potentially. What advice do you have for them to uncover potential crisis sources in the family? So that they don't get the call from the police that says, your daughter's been raped.
Right.
Your son's been pulled over and he has a DUI.
It very seldom happens that somebody calls you and goes like, hey, I know you don't realize this, but your family's in crisis.
Right.
That's just not real.
Right.
The crisis is you're looking at your child and you're like, I am afraid for them. Their decisions, the things that they are doing, are leading them down a path that I don't seem to be able to redirect. If I don't act now, I'm afraid of bodily harm or death.
Yeah.
Right? Or psychological harm. Let's throw that in there. Spiritual harm. Those may be the crises that they're facing.
Spiritual harm. Talk about spiritual harm.
You know, we know
Yeah.
that with God on our side, we can prevail.
Yeah.
With God on our side, it takes away the fear. With God on our side, we can be in relationships and connect, and we can feel His joy, and we can create a space for grace.
Yeah.
Right? A part of our great parent awakening is recognizing when that spiritual battle's being lost. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that your child is pushing back against their spiritual identity of the family. That's part of their development process. That's just part of it. But when you recognize that they've gotten so far away from their own personal values and the family values that they're beginning to look like the enemy's got a hold of them,
Yeah.
that's a crisis. That's a spiritual crisis.
So now some of these viewers are hearing this and their eyebrows are raised and they're like, I might have an issue. What do I do next? What's the next thing I do? I come home tonight and I do what? Am I having a conversation with my kiddo? Am I going into their room and I'm going through their stuff? What do I do now?
Maybe all of those.
Yeah.
But I think the first thing we have to do is mom and dad or whomever the parent
System.
community is, right? And it may be, you know, mom and stepdad and dad and stepmom, and all four of us are coming together. We have to have a conversation about, we're in crisis. We are in crisis, and I'm very afraid for little Johnny or little Joan. That's where it starts. And then it may go as far as they're not safe. Right now, they're not physically safe. We need to go through their room and confiscate, objects, items that they use for self-harm, or drugs, alcohol, whatever the case may be. Go through their journal, and I hate that. I hate that that's sometimes an option, but to see what their life really looks like. Remember, we want to break pattern. We want to make sure this doesn't become an intergenerational pattern for this kid and their kids, and then maybe the grandchildren. So we want to make sure we break those patterns by creating safety. And the way we go about that is intervening to the least restrictive treatment that is plausible and effective. Is that residential care? It may be. Is it outpatient? Maybe, but it's likely not going to work to stay in the same environment. If you did what you did, you get what you got.
Yeah.
Nothing changes where we're coming.
You mentioned intergenerational impact. Talk a little bit about it. So you're talking about what's on the line. These are future mothers and fathers.
Mhm.
That you're talking about.
Yep,
They're
absolutely.
going to have kids, most likely.
Maybe sooner than we would hope for.
Right. That's a crisis. And you're talking about passing down to those kids the same sort of fear, uncertainty, doubt, anxiety, depression.
Let me ask you this. Are you anything like your mom?
Yes.
Are you anything like your dad?
Yes.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Me too. Are there some things that you worked really hard not to bring into who you are as a parent?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Same here, right? And so you chose to break some intergenerational patterns. I chose to break some huge intergenerational patterns. And what we need to recognize is when these adolescents with not completely developed brains are making decisions and learning how to be young adults, if they continue to carry that very unhealthy behavior into their adulthood, A, they may not make it there. B, when they do, they begin to set those neural pathways in their brains. Action, reaction, right? I immediately go back to the same neural pathway. This happens, I do this. This is what I do. I have this pattern. And if we teach that to our kids, well, guess what they're going to do? They're going to teach it to their kids. At some point in time, the sooner we can break those patterns, the better. It creates safety, and we know that safety comes through love over fear.
Yeah.
And God's love is the greatest love.
What you're talking about, and when you say it, here's where my brain goes. I go to, what is the cost of doing nothing? There's a viewer on the line right now that's like, I'm not buying it. My family's not in crisis. What do we tell that viewer is the cost of doing nothing?
Well, the ultimate cost is death.
Right.
The ultimate cost is death. I literally remember a family that said, hey, we're gonna send Johnny, but we're gonna wait for his 16th birthday. He's got his party this weekend, and then he's gonna come in on Monday.
Yeah.
Well, he overdosed at his birthday party and died.
Yeah.
That's the ultimate cost. And I don't say that to scare people. That's a true story.
Yeah.
And then let's think about what happens to their psychological well-being. If they continue to make these poor choices, let's remember, they know they're poor choices.
Right.
And that does not make them feel better about themselves.
Right.
And our adolescents are in a mental health crisis.
Right.
Nationwide, maybe worldwide,
Yeah.
but nationwide, we can see our adolescents are struggling.
You talked about death being the ultimate consequence of doing nothing. Suicide is the second leading cause of death amongst young adults. And so that is exactly correct, Mike.
It's real.
Right.
We can't, you can't deny results.
Right. So let alone going to college, getting a job, all the pervasive expectations that parents have for their kids, because we all want the best for our kids. It is, all that's up in the air now if I do nothing.
Right.
Right. Right. Well, Mike, that is absolutely the clear view. So thank you for sharing that.
Can you feel the clear view?
I can see it. I can see it for
absolutely.
sure. I'd like to lead us in a prayer to close. Please bow your head and Father, Son, and Spirit, amen. Dear Heavenly Father, there are families in crisis out there. Thank you for bringing them to us. For those that are not yet here, remind them, Lord, there is hope. There's options. Lord, bring them to the right salvation for their family, for their future generations of their family. Lord, thank you for enveloping us all in the warmth of your love and protection. In His name we pray. Amen. In the Father, Son, and Spirit, amen.
Amen.
Thank you again, ladies and gentlemen. It's been another episode of The Clear View. God bless.
God bless.
Thank you so much.